Welcome to this webinar today. I just want to explain to everyone how to use the platform if you're not familiar with this On24 platform. You'll see different windows up. You can move them and resize them. One of the windows will have the video up, another one will have the slides. And of course, you've got the question area there where you can put some questions in and we'll answer them. We'll save most of the questions to the end, but certainly don't hesitate to plow them in ahead of time. So today, we'll discuss how media and entertainment organizations can use AI and machine learning to maximize revenue for a variety of use cases. As organizations in our space struggle with disruptive technical, economic, and consumer landscapes, emerging technology is proving to be a powerful revenue optimization solution. So as we anticipate increased adoption in the coming years, and this is why I love doing these webinars, particularly on AI and ML, it's good to understand how people, revenue stakeholders in a variety of functions, need to quickly understand the use cases and applications. So we're going to cover a fair bit of that today, and we've got a great panel of people. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter, Andrew Thompson of Symphony MediaAI. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Maximizing Video Revenues through AI. We're incredibly excited to be here today and look forward to sharing a little bit about AI and ML. So I'd like to walk through some of our speakers today. My name is Andrew Thompson. I'm SVP of Sales and Marketing over at Symphony MediaAI. I have a number of my colleagues joining today, Karen Blyer, SVP of Managed Services, Matt Smith, VP of Revedia Engage, and Ashley Kensvatter, Director of Product. We've got a great agenda for you. We're going to chat about data challenges and opportunities, predictive insight for churn, revenue forecasting, anomaly detection, and finish up with a little audience Q&A. Sprinkled throughout the agenda, we're going to have a little Q&A with a number of our panelists, including myself. So I'd like to share a little bit just on Symphony MediaAI. We're a 30-year-old revenue optimization company. Over the last couple of years, we've grown 20%, year over year on the employee front. Specifically within the media and entertainment industry, we've got a 90% reach with all of our main clients. We've got roughly about 37 patents as a company. A lot of those patents are tied, as you can imagine, to our AI and ML tech stack. To give you a little bit of the scope on kind of the magnitude of our business, we last year provided some of our revenue optimization services around audit. And we audited roughly about $28 billion worth of our clients' licensed revenues, both linear and digital. That included visibility into roughly about 4,000 distribution agreements. And then we, leveraging our SaaS, AI, and ML services, managed roughly about $8 billion worth of our clients' digital and linear revenues. That was spread out across about 100 million different subscribers. So as we kick off the webinar today, I wanted to kind of set a baseline for what artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning, ML are. And so at its core, AI is all about incorporating human intelligence into machines and computers. If we want to get a little bit more specific, it's about computer platforms or machines, ingesting data, learning from that data, and being able to make decisions from that data to achieve a goal or complete a task. Now, machine learning is really a component, subcomponent of AI. Machine learning provides those computer systems with the structure to learn, i.e., algorithms or modeling, right? These algorithms are used to gather data and analyze data. And machine learning definitely needs the assistance of humans, right? Programmers. I think a great example of a kind of algorithm or machine learning out there practicing in the wild is something as simple as just making recommendations of content based on prior viewing habits. Now, going a little bit further, we have mainly two different types of machine learning. First is supervised machine learning, and the second is unsupervised. And so supervised machine learning, it really requires you to teach your AI system how to interpret that data, right? So examples of that are, you're creating your own modeling, right? Your own algorithms. This could be asking an AI how many subscribers are likely to churn in the next quarter, or how many people watch a specific content asset in a specific region. Now, unsupervised ML, that means that the algorithms, they're learning on their own, right? They're answering questions and finding patterns that humans didn't think to ask. So some examples of these might be, unsupervised ML or AI, finding poor content recommendations, or maybe even a more specific example would be, a subscriber chooses an annual subscription payment, and then immediately in their subscription center, they choose to not renew. Now, that triggers them to being put on an incorrect marketing campaign, trying to win the subscriber back, when the reality is they just started their journey. So, both supervised and unsupervised ML and AI are very valuable. And later on, we'll discuss how and which AI platform you can choose and have the greatest impact and the quality of your machine learning. Now, I want to share a little bit just of a high-level kind of overview of media and entertainment in the industry today, some of the specific challenges and opportunities that are out there. So you think of, this slide up here is a great slide because it really speaks to just how, bifurcated the monetization paths have become. You see all the VODs up there, SVOD, AVOD, PVOD, TVOD, and all the other traditional methods that we're able to consume content, right? And the revenue streams, direct-to-consumer, ad-based, and licensing. And the thing behind this is there is so much data to manage. And that really presents an opportunity because it's more data to drive valuable insights. Organizations that are able to help tame kind of this data complexity, they're going to be able to improve on their overall revenue performance. You look at specifically, when we talk about some of these complexities, the adoption of new revenue models like premium video on demand, PVOD, or advertising video on demand, AVOD. These have been accelerated over the last year by the pandemic. PVOD, it's a subcategory of transactional video on demand. And this allows customers, right, just to make sure we're on the same page with kind of our definitions, to rent films alongside or in place of traditional releases in movie theaters, for a period of time. And the costs are a little higher, right? It's $19.99 to $20.99 a month. Disney Plus had Mulan going for about $29.99 a month. An example of this complexity is this new model, brings, traditional digital rental and purchase costs. It tweaks it a little bit, right? Because those costs were previously based on theatrical ticket sales. But with no ticket sales, new modeling needs to exist to ensure that the revenue is maximized after that initial premium video on demand period. So speaking about, AVOD, PVOD, right? A lot of media and entertainment's, their monetization strategies, they're shifting. Leaders are embracing disruption in, media and entertainment. So, you think of, for instance, back in December, Warner Media announced that they're releasing all 17 of their Warner Brothers theatrical releases simultaneously on HBO Max. Even as late as April, Jason Clark, their CEO of Warner Media, he said, big DC comic type movies are going to go back to theatrical releases only. Simultaneous releases, they're here to stay. And so, when you kind of think of last summer, when we were all kind of hunkered down at home, kind of quarantining, in the U.S., we had on average, the household, I think on average had about 4 subscription video services. And that's trending downward, right? An alternative entertainment option is AVOD, which is rising because, as customers are cutting back on their subscription costs, they're looking for, lower barriers to entry, right? And brands, they're launching AVOD services, really try and help compensate for revenue losses due to churn from, having a lower, freer barrier to entry, and for some other reasons we'll get to a little bit later. But, all of these new monetization models, right, get back to the data and the sheer volume of it, and then also specifically how to derive value from it, right? And so you think of data science teams, they spend a lot of their time just on data ingestion, model training. That doesn't leave a ton of time for analyzing or even having a separate group being able to execute off of what they've analyzed, right? So one of the things that we found that can be very helpful is, having domain expertise. Looks like we're getting a little ahead on the slides there. Having a little bit of a domain expertise on, what it is the data that you're evaluating, right? And so, having data scientists and tools that might not come from a background and understand the different modeling and algorithms of the data that you're trying to analyze, potentially can kind of hold you back. And so, data really, it's often treated like a commodity, right? Something to be stored, not a strategic asset to be leveraged. So, there's some interesting stats out there you see up on the screen here, but one that sticks out to me was that overall media and entertainment companies, they stand to capture roughly like a 57% greater enterprise value with, the adoption and proliferation of AI and ML. And this slide I love, because this talks about how to scale. So, we saw that slide a few moments ago, just talking about all that data, that new data that's kind of being presented with the new monetization models. So on the left-hand side here, you see that input column. Think for a moment about all of the different sources, origin sources of your data, where it's deriving from, right? You've got all of your third-party, your content partners that are delivering data for you. You have all of your in-house systems, right? You kind of pull the veil back even further on those in-house systems. You've got your authentication layer of your direct-to-consumer app, your payment gateway for your direct-to-consumer app, the actual application layer itself. So all of that interactivity that your subscribers have with your applications. And then lastly, even quality of experience, right? Looking at startup times, rebuffer rates, average bit rate quality, all of that kind of jumbled together, right, can provide valuable insights into your business. So how do you get all of that data, first off, into a system, right, to kind of start creating a data lake? Then you got to think about, well, how do I normalize that, right? How do I find common data fields that I can have all of this data come into? Because a lot of these sources are delivering that data, different cadence, right? Different volume, different breadth of data, in different kind of portals and different ways to consume it. So how do you find that, kind of map KPIs around the different data fields that you want, then create kind of your modeling, right? Your algorithms. How do you analyze all of that? And then lastly, that integration component, how are you actually executing off of, all of that data that you have just analyzed? Actually do some A/B testing and figuring out if this data is accurate or not. So most organizations resort to analyzing less data. It's so hard to scale. And that can slow down strategic business decision-making in a very fast-paced industry. And so it's really critical to have an enterprise AI solution that can help automate manual workflows and find previously unknown data sets that could potentially positively impact your business. And with that, I'm going to throw it back over to Stan. We have our first Ask the Expert series. Stan, take it away.
Yeah, Andrew, you had some interesting points there. I mean, really cool points. I think that the cool one I was just scribbling down here: 60% of businesses can't leverage data. They just don't. There's so much data and trying to understand that. So it sounds to me like media and entertainment executives understand the need to transform, but what are some of the common pitfalls when it comes to the time to actually execute it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's challenging. The industry on a whole is dealing with a lot of legacy in-house systems. There's been a lot of M&A. So you've got multiple systems kind of duplicating efforts. You've got tight budgets coupled with lofty revenue goals. So, they're putting a lot of thought into, build versus buy when it comes to kind of AI and ML. And one of the most common pitfalls is just figuring out, where do I begin, right? I've got this ocean of data, and what do I do with it all? So mentioned a moment ago, having a ton of in-house, third-party vendor data sources. So I think it's critical for companies to start building their in-house data lakes, isolating, identifying a few KPIs that are most critical to their business, and then being able to track those via a nimble, flexible, kind of unsupervised AI strategy.
Yeah, so you mentioned AVOD is a key trend, but what do content providers need to do differently to really succeed in this new paradigm?
Yeah, well, you know what? It varies by company, right? Because for some, AVOD, is an additional platform to monetize their content assets. But for some, AVOD is an appetizer, right? They're licensing their content to AVOD. They're creating their own AVOD platforms with a main goal and intent of driving these consumers back to a direct-to-consumer kind of paid subscription app, right? So, when you think of what does it take to succeed, right? Ad technology, it's advanced, but what's missing is kind of a 360-degree view of that customer outside the ad platform interactions. Content owners, they should strive to, at the very beginning, as they're negotiating just their, content partner agreement, try and strive to negotiate gathering as much data rights as they can, right, in their renewals or in their initial licensing deals. Data is the oxygen, right, to help make AI and ML, strategies work. And then making sure you've got data platforms that can quickly ingest, learn from, analyze, and make, predictions on that data.
So the DTC space is getting pretty crowded. I mean, you've got the linear providers shifting over their models and smaller OTT apps growing, as well as all these niche people coming up with OTT, call them channels. So what will differentiate the winners, from the rest?
Yeah, I mean, part of earnings calls, quarterly board meetings, companies are kind of wearing as a badge of honor. They're reporting on their OTT subs, their sub counts. They're investing, I think, a ton of budget on customer acquisition. And so I think, kind of right now, what it's been like for the last couple of years, it's an arms race for us, right? Subs, and attracting us to their platforms. But I think it's quickly going to go back to focusing on customer retention and ultimately us, subscribers really having a higher lifetime value over, their initial customer acquisition costs. At SMAI, Symphony MediaAI, we talk a lot about quality of insights as a key differentiator. A big quality of insight for us is around content valuation, associating dollar values against all of your content assets, to make more informed decisions on content recommendations, licensing, and so forth. Other insights, I think, which will be key for folks to kind of set themselves apart from their competitors out there. Just understanding the speed of the app, frequency of use, breadth of metadata, accessibility of the app, and more. All these seems like, table stakes. But again, behind the scenes, there's a ton of complexity with all of, this data. So I think, companies that have robust AI engines, to ingest, analyze, provide insights, predictions into their own data, it's going to, ultimately help set their direct-to-consumer apps apart.
Absolutely. You do have to change quickly and, be able to adapt and, as you say, pivot pretty quickly. So with that, let's crank it over to Matt Smith here. Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Dan. Hello, everybody. Glad you're here. Let's talk about customer retention and using predictive audience insight to mitigate churn. So we've all lost sleep over this graphic. Churn is a term that's become almost a bad word in the industry. It rose in 2020 about 38% for OTT services last year. And the binge and churn is the new normal. Surely you've all heard of a friend, a colleague, someone that you might know, who is enamored with a particular show, signs up for a service, binges that particular show, and then no longer comes back as a subscriber the next month. In fact, I've worked with some services where users have gone on and binged an entire show in a trial period and never converted to a paying subscriber. That's a situation that no one wants to deal with. So as customers come and go, we need to capture as much data as we can about them so that we can understand what motivates them and ultimately to retain them as subscribers. they'll stay if their needs are met, believe it or not. You've seen a lot of data around why customers leave, but more importantly, do you and do your team know why they stay? There's a handful of items here that I'd like you to peruse on this slide, but the good news is if you can figure out what the customers want, you can give them a reason to choose your platform. That might be a particular show or shows, a genre of shows. It may be the way that the service operates and feels, and the way that they can find content and interact with content. So remember, though, that these are averages. They're a starting point. Every subscriber, every customer has a different reason to stay or leave. And our job is to figure out what that is and ultimately, again, to keep them as a subscriber or to secure them as a subscriber. The job's not just sales and marketing. Teams across the company are getting involved. So as Andrew mentioned, it's really hard to figure out exactly what customers want, to separate the signal from the noise, if you were, within your data. And AI is the most promising solution to scale insight. But most enterprise AI was built for technical experts and not everyday users. It needs to be customized. The analogy I make is that you make a promise to yourself that you're going to get into great shape and you're going to get that beach bod. But as you walk into the gym and you see 70 different machines, if you don't know how to use them, you won't attain that ultimate goal. Same applies to AI and ML. It's all about training that algorithm so that we can achieve the results that we want. There's no data standards. Every distribution agreement, every customer database and billing system is different. Overcoming this is the key to the quality of that insight, right? Again, training is the important thing. The revenue impact of the right or wrong AI technology can no longer be ignored. In a few years, AI will be table stakes, as Andrew mentioned at the top, not a differentiator. So it's going to be the thing that everyone uses. So your competitors today are using some of this types of data to anticipate new market expansion opportunities for next quarter, next year. That could be as simple as saying we have a show that is Spanish language, or a show that is in English, and it's easy to put it into a different territory or geography just based on that. But it's going to get more complex, and you're going to want to use the AI and the data to help determine where you expand and why you expand and what shows go where. So your competitors are preparing to translate and caption content, for example, using some of these technologies. The question is, are you? So more than any other industry, media entertainment technology strategies prioritize the customer experience. According to KPMG, customer experience is now the #1 concern for M&E CIOs. So we need better process and customer insight today to drive the quality of experience, and CIOs are telling us that every day. The customer engagement is becoming a team sport. This is no longer just a sales and marketing problem to solve. So we're going beyond the storing of the data and managing the data, and more to using that data to tell a story and help educate us about our audience and what they want and where they want to go. So back to you, Stan. We're going to do a little Q&A here on predictive insight for audience engagement.
Yeah, sure. The cost to get a customer back is always expensive. So you were really clear that technology is a big bet for media and entertainment execs battling churn, which indicates today's solutions are adequate. And what's missing?
Thanks. A couple of ways to answer that one. So enterprise-wide intelligence, using that intelligence across the entire spectrum of the organization. We need to democratize insight for all users, not just technical. We need to operationalize intelligence so it's accessible to stakeholders in the format that they need it, when they need it, in real time. And what that means is that we have to normalize data. So the data for an authentication layer will look different than the data for the payment processing platform. Will look different than the data coming from audience behavior in the app. But if we're able to normalize, and I use the term, I say homogenize it for some executives, so that the algorithm can look at this in a holistic way and analyze data as opposed to specific siloed data. We can see more trends, and we can see the data really tell a story. Additionally, predictive insight. Media entertainment organizations can't just react to change. They need to prepare for it. When it comes to customer engagement, that means understanding what's going to churn, when and why. It's about understanding what makes an ideal customer. Why do they stay and why do they leave? What is the ideal what is the ideal subscriber? What do they want, and how do we present it to them? So you can reduce your customer acquisition costs that you touched on, Stan, and really target promotions to specific subscribers and specific viewers that you know should react based on what the story the data is telling you about them. And then prescriptive recommendations. The best insight is laid to waste, really, if teams don't know how to apply it. And media entertainment needs solutions that offer or even execute recommendations to maximize the value of the insight that they generate. For example, the data could tell you a story that a particular show about war heroes is resonating for males 25 to 54. So consequently, other similar type shows or that have some similar themes may resonate really well with that particular audience.
Well, you hit on several key points there, and I love the way you brought up siloed data. That's always an issue. So what new or cool ways are media providers utilizing AI-generated data?
Some of the secret weapons here are to look at content in the ways that Andrew touched on at the top, and in unsupervised and supervised methods. So with a supervised method, you're looking for particular things that you're expecting to come out of the data. Common things like, again, content affinity between a certain group or another, and then being able to act on that. But unsupervised AI is really interesting and can find things that you're not expecting to see. For example, you could have simple things like users whose credit cards are expiring in a particular month. But you could also find data that says you've got a group of users who somehow signed up but didn't have an expiration date on their trial subscription, and money's going out the side door. So those are some of the secret weapons, if you will, along the AI and ML path that we think, or we're seeing, media entertainment companies experience and leverage.
So tell me more about the idea of subscriber engagement. You talked about being a team sport. What are the implications of this change?
Instead of particular teams looking at an audience with specificity just because of what their function is, we're seeing machine learning and AI helping to make the data so that it's usable by every part of the organization, from customer acquisition to those that manage the infrastructure and play out, to those who measure audience engagement. When the data is normalized and we can apply intelligence and see trends, again, we start to see stories, we start to see patterns that emerge, so that every part of the organization is engaged, and it's not just about how many payments are we processing a day or how many signups do we have. It's really a holistic approach of using data across every part of the enterprise.
Fair enough. Let's go back over to Andrew.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Stan. We're going to transition and chat about financial insights, specifically around revenue forecasting and anomaly detection. So we've talked a lot about these new revenue models and the challenges that they can cause. I think one of the biggest challenges out there is you've got legacy systems and vendor relationships in place that cannot move quickly enough to be able to accommodate, manage these new revenue models like advertising video on demand and premium video on demand, right? So, companies, they might have anywhere between 50, maybe even lower, 25. On the high end, up to 1,000 different content partners they've got agreements with, right? And they are receiving, data in varying, kind of cadences, but they need systems to be able to automate and manage just the day-to-day running of their business, right? So the paying of their content partners, the revenues that they're receiving from their partners, understanding just the overall popularity of their content and where that content is being watched. And you can kind of see there that there's a little bit of kind of a line in the sand where a lot of these kind of older kind of revenue management systems, were very, very good at doing just that, right? Managing revenues. But a lot of the data that's coming in together from a lot of these newer revenue models, it's got both not only just the sheer volume of revenue data that's been earned or that needs to get paid out, but a whole host of additional valuable, insights and data from, the viewers and the type of content they're watching, length of time, regionality, and so forth. So this gets to, one of the things that we mentioned earlier, Matt mentioned it and I had mentioned it, and that's around, content valuation, just how critical that's becoming, right? And so, providers, they understand the importance of determining value or ROI on a per asset basis across many potential platforms and partners, right? And more of our clients are finding this challenging. They know, what's my most popular content, right? They understand that, but being focused on building a solution that provides more granular data, having tools that can actually measure, financial performance on a title basis across libraries of content, right? That might range from, 100 to 250 content assets up to 10,000 content assets, right? This can help on a number of different fronts, right? It can help not only with some low-hanging fruit around having more impactful content recommendation in app, right? This gets to helping with churn, because we know as subscribers, if I'm logging into a direct-to-consumer app and I'm watching more than one show, the probability of me churning goes dramatically down. So then that becomes having a really, really slick recommendation engine. But it also helps with customer acquisition strategy. Getting a deeper understanding of your subscribers, their socioeconomic and demographic background, right, to be able to target them with the right content, and definitely helps with customer retention. Once you are leveraging tools to understand and predict who is going to churn, right, well, you got to take some prescriptive actions on being able to retain them, right? So being able to have the right content in front of them, help get them deeper entrenched, more deeply entrenched with your content is going to be key. But it also helps with, choosing what original content creation are we going to choose? What additional content are we going to license, right? It's all about lowering risk and the probability of having a unsuccessful content asset. And CFOs, they're definitely providing, and I should say prioritizing technology, AI and ML. We're seeing a major digital transformation amongst, finance, accounting, and legal teams. But these teams are tasked with managing a massive amount of data, right? So there's a lot of overlap between those groups and IT. And it can be really hard to manage, data content rights, license fees, and they're tasked with increasing revenues while lowering overall, OpEx, right? So naturally, they're turning toward automation and AI to enhance capabilities and reduce their overall overhead. Now, I like this slide because it's a great study from IBM, but it's their latest C-suite study. And this revealed just what top-performing CFOs, they call them torchbearers. What do they do differently? So of course, you can see, right, cash flow management, it's critical, right, to their stability. But the first and third items on this chart, they're interesting because it all, digs deep, right? Management reporting, performance analytics, profitability and margin analysis. All of that deals with, having deep, robust systems to do an analyzation of all of that data, right? I think one of the interesting use cases is what Matt brought up a moment ago. I'm actually going to speak to it on this next slide because, and I'll get to that in just a moment. It's around, these finance teams. They still remain underserved, though, when you compare their group and their tech adoption amongst the other groups in their business. And so, you look at one of the more principal kind of instruments that a lot of the groups use today, and it's Excel, right? It was 40-year ago, old product. And it's still a great tool. It's utilized by a lot of FP&A teams. But, those types of tools, it presents real challenges to, managing these newer digital revenue models just because of the sheer size and scope, right? There's so many different content partners out there. The sheer volume of some of these Excel, pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and all this stuff, it can get incredibly tough to manage, right? I think one of the use cases I love that Matt brought up was the idea of, again, lowering risk and being able to lower probability of having unsuccessful content assets when you are breaking into new regions. So mentioned kind of, how the C-suite, right, and what they're focused on when they're reporting to the board. Not only is it subscriber counts, but it's also, well, where do these subscribers live? Okay, what's your, strategic global strategy? What new nations are you going to break into? And so if you have a deep understanding, right, of the demographic, socioeconomic status of these nations, these folks that you're going to be trying to reach out to, and you have an understanding of what type of content has been successful across those same socio and demographic data sets, right, across other nations, that can lead you to have a higher probability of having a successful launch and maximizing the kind of revenue you can make early on, right? You're going to have learnings, right, as you initially launch that product, but you'll be able to lower that risk of having an unsuccessful launch, not on the IT front or anything like that, just solely on adoption and viewership and consumption numbers.
Yeah, well,
let's throw it back over to Stan and Ashley Kinsvatter for a little Q&A.
Yeah, that's a good go there you've got, and no question. I think you brought up the key points on that. Is forecasting is an issue, and it's a struggle for media and entertainment executives and finance teams today. Forecasting is key for budgeting and on and on and on. But I'm going to ask Ashley this question: what makes it so difficult, but also so important?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stan. And I'm going to break that up into let's talk about what makes it so difficult. So as Andrew mentioned, it's very challenging when you're trying to do this in Excel and you have all these different revenue models, fast channels versus asset management, VOD, linear and broadcast, all of these different components, the fees, the royalties, everything that really goes into it, the file size, any type of error, miscalculation. It's really difficult in the current entertainment space to really manage this forecasting. And then why is it so important? Well, if 2020 taught us anything, it taught us to be agile, and it showed us volatility. It also showed us how many new people could be really creative and come into, creating new content, distributor platforms, all of this disruption. And finance really needs to understand and explain these key factors to their C-suite executives, being able to, in advance, determine what's going to materially impact their entire business.
Yeah, so certainly AI capabilities, they add so much value as far as that goes. And, I was at a CPA thing a few years ago, and they were actually worried about AI taking their jobs away. So why don't finance teams leverage this technology?
Yeah, that is one of the things that we've heard as well. But it's also because, finance is finance. It's not as glamorous, or it's a back office function. And so, AI isn't, when it's in finance, it's not looking at content or churn or anything like that, maybe those more glamorous features, but it is crucial and it is critical, to do the financing and to understand this huge transformation in this dynamic industry that the media really sits in. Andrew has mentioned how revenue models are continually proliferating, and finance tools really need the skills and the tools to accommodate that different landscape. And it's, AI really isn't taking the job away from the individuals. It's enhancing the individual's ability, because with that unsupervised learning and that other technology that AI has, it's going to bring things to the forefront to that finance team that the human eye, even the most experienced human eye, and certainly Excel, just aren't going to be able to detect.
Yeah, it seems we're dumping on Excel, but
and it's not a bad tool. It's not a bad tool. It just right now may be the only tool that's available.
Yeah, well, it's universal. Everybody's certainly familiar with it. So, Karen, let's turn it over to you for a minute. I've got a question for you since you're on here. So, what results do M&E organizations and finance teams especially see when they start evolving their technology?
I think that what we consistently see from those who invest in evolving their technology is massively reduced overhead. So we've seen customers reduce operating expenditures by as much as 2x by outsourcing services, and 3x or more when they start using SaaS and AI tools. So as everyone out here is probably very well aware, creating technology, innovating technology, and maintaining it is expensive. It's hard. It's very resource heavy and a huge commitment. Finding the right tech and AI partners to take on the heavy lifting with you can make a huge difference and create really big financial efficiencies as well. Some examples, with licensed distribution models. So those are for like the linear and digital as well. The greatest gains typically come from enhanced agreement and license fee management associated with more advanced technologies. So digitizing contracts for analysis provides both humans and algorithms better transparency into distributor compliance. And AI can detect revenue leakage that humans just can't. So, for example, identifying signs of a content distributor under reporting or paying below the contracted terms of the underlying agreement. It happens all the time. And no matter how great somebody is at finance, detecting that without the use of technology is really difficult to overcome. For direct-to-consumer models, evolved technology provides a single comprehensive view of your subscribers and revenues. You can no longer have data living in disparate systems anymore if you want to survive in media and entertainment. Structuring the data, normalizing the data, which, Andrew and Matt talked about earlier, and presenting that data in a meaningful and consumable manner. That's really what enables data-driven decisioning and actionable intelligence. And sometimes what seems like uncorrelated data sets actually end up being highly correlated when put in the right platform and being able to identify, again, those highly correlated factors that otherwise would have been undetected. And again, just going back to that, enabling better data decisioning.
Well, I like the way you worded the revenue leakage thing. That slips by. But let's jump into a point that Andrew brought up initially, just about AI being able to flag things much better than humans can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the key thing about AI, especially unsupervised machine learning, is the ability to find unknown unknowns, right? So a human can ask a question to a BI tool and it will be able to answer that question. Machine learning can actually detect issues that we're not even thinking to ask for. An example of this, taking subscriber analysis, our AI engine performed on one of the streaming platform partners that we have. Matt touched on this for just a quick second, but within just 24 hours of data ingest of the streaming platform's data, our AI engine identified that the streaming platform had over 15,000 subscribers whose trials had no expiration dates. We didn't ask this question, but we were able to uncover this issue very rapidly when applying machine learning. And so, this use case, represented for this particular partner around $1 million in revenue leakage that may have been perpetuated indefinitely if not detected. $1 million is a huge amount of money for any organization.
Absolutely. Well, let's get everybody on here, and we'll answer some questions that have come in. Certainly, if anybody online here has some questions, just go to the Q&A box and type them in, and we'll get them. I've got one that had come in here, and I think it's probably good for you to answer this one, Matt. What are the key outputs that AI can provide to help me with subscriber retention?
Good one. Thanks, Ben. So couple of ways to address that one. First thing I can mention is content affinity. That is, what is the audience like? What are they resonating with? And AI and ML can look at that by a group, male, female, or regionality. We can look at affinity of a particular title. We can look at that as a particular show, or by demographic, right? Certain groups that like content I mentioned earlier, a show about World War II may do really well with, males 25 to 54, but maybe not women. And you can use those trends to educate or to populate, rather, a content strategy. The other one you've heard resonate a little bit through the webinar, which is churn probability, but also the prescriptive solutions. So, for example, if you've got a subscriber or someone in a trial, and that person's in day 7 of a 15-day trial, and they haven't watched a single piece of content, we can see that trend, message our customer, and say, you've got an at-risk trial subscriber. So instead of just sending them the generic email saying, hey, we've got these shows we just put on the service, you could really go to them and say, we realize you're a busy person. If you'll opt in for your first month, we'll discount the service by 50%. So prescriptive things like that. Or with a subscriber who's in a trial period, or even a regular subscriber, you see those trends where they're engaging with certain shows, and so your emails and your marketing campaigns and them can be much more prescriptive, much more specific than than the blanket sort of approach to addressing that.
Absolutely. All right, I've got another question here. I think this is probably good for you, Andrew. Can I use AI to understand what AVOD platforms are performing better than others? That's kind of an interesting question, because it does get you right into the detail.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think, the way that AI can truly provide the most value in kind of comparing and contrasting AVOD platforms is, there's no standardization of data from AVOD platforms, the data that you get. So, leveraging AI can help with the standardization of all of that data that you're getting, because you're getting it in different, cadences, different volumes, and so forth, like we talked, a moment ago. I think one of the other challenges, right, is just metadata management, right? And so, the source companies, they'll have the owners of the content, their metadata, but then that is passed along to their actual content partners, and they might change up that metadata. So then, when all that data flows back, and that metadata isn't matching up, you got to make sure that the quality of data on a per asset basis, just how accurate that it is, right? And so AI can help create kind of a common stable of data that you can compare and contrast across all of your content partners, right, via a super easy to use kind of user interface. you know, you can kind of build that, and it's mammoth, especially if you have a ton of partners. It can take 6 months, 12 months just to build something out, and it can take months to manage it, right, kind of manually. So you want to automate that process. I think that's how AI can help AVOD platforms.
And certainly, as mentioned before, it's being able to pivot quickly. Again, a good point there. This kind of leads into the next question, Andrew. Hadn't really thought of this one before, but how can AI be used to help shape my content acquisition strategy?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give a real world example here. I'm a fan of the American actor Bob Odenkirk. So me, right, as an American, I know Bob Odenkirk from the 90s as one of the founders of the show Mr. Show. I know him as a member of Saturday Night Live. He's a comedian. But there's a whole wider audience internationally that know him from his role as the kind of weird, fidgety lawyer in Breaking Bad, and then the spin-off series Better Call Saul. And so, you know, his team used tools to analyze, right, the type of successful movies, right, that were, you know, at an international scale, and then his specific audience, right, for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. They had no clue, the international audience, of his prior kind of comedic, you know, background and experience. And so he created this movie called Nobody. And it was just launched about a month ago, premium video on demand, PVOD. So it's in the theaters, right? And I actually rented it and watched it. And I couldn't believe it because here was this comedian that was in a Liam Neeson Taken style, one man versus the world kind of show. And it was awesome. And it totally worked. It worked for me because I'm, you know, just a fan of Bob Odenkirk. But again, the global kind of audience, they're none the wiser. Now, again, it's all about the data and tools that enable them to make that decision that this was going to be a profitable decision, right, to be able to create this movie and have a high likelihood of being successful. So, you know, kind of an interesting real world example there.
Yeah, certainly we have seen that with some scripted series where, you know, AI or you know, just looking at consumer stats and viewer stats where they've decided, no, let's not waste our time with the pilot. Let's just jump right in and do the production as far as that goes. Well, we've had a great session here today. That's all the questions we've got coming up here at the moment. Actually, there's a couple more, but we can answer those offline. We're kind of running out of time here today. So I really appreciate everybody kicking in here. I'll turn it over to you, Andrew, just so people know how to get a hold of people.
Yeah, so thank you, Stan. Thank you, IABM. Thanks to everyone that registered and attended today's session. You know, Symphony MediaAI, you know, a lot of the challenges that we've talked about today, you know, we've got AI and ML powered solutions for revenue management, you know, content licensing agreements and so forth, and around churn. So if you've got some questions, you know, not quite happy with some of your in-house solutions, third-party solutions that you've got today, we'd love to have a conversation with you. You can reach us at, you know, symphonymedia.com or just email us at info@symphonymedia.com. So thank you all again for joining, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesdays.